This is CXO Secrets, the podcast that takes you inside the minds of business and technology leaders and reveals the strategies behind their success. Coming up in today's show.
The challenge, which is, I would say a global challenge, it's a challenge of complexity when you develop an application and the volume of information that you as an individual, when you join a team, you have to master to understand all the different pieces and the interactions between all the different pieces in the application. And it's not only a question of understanding the technologies, but you also have to understand the languages that are used to develop the different parts of the application. You also have to understand, obviously, the business logic of the application. That's also a big part of the understanding that you need to acquire when you join a team and you're not an expert of the domain. So it makes the life of a software engineer today very complicated, and that's why most of the software engineers now are focusing on one part of the process or one part of the application.
CXO Secrets is powered by EDS, going beyond connections. Find out about upcoming C-level events, experiences, and insights at edsxevents.com. Olivier Bonsignour, VP for Product Development at Cast. Thank you very much for joining us on CXO Secrets.
Thank you very much for having me.
Now, whereabouts are you joining us from on the show today?
Today I'm in New York.
Okay, well, today, Olivier, what I want to talk about is software development and how it's changed and perhaps where it's at right now as well. And in particular, how complex developing, deploying, supporting software today has become. And then what I want to do is to land on the role that artificial intelligence, or what you refer to as software intelligence, can play in taming all of that complexity. And of course, as we always do on this show, I'd like to find out more about your role, your background, your role as a leader within the software development space. Does that sound like a good plan for today, Olivier?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's type of questions we can address pretty easily today.
Excellent. Right. Well, I tell you what, even if they're not easy, we're going to ask them anyway, because that's what we do on CXO Secrets. I want to start with your journey, because I know that working in software has been a lifelong journey for you. I'm curious what your reflections on what development looked like for you when you began. And how you've seen it change over that time. What was the kind of starting point, and how have things got more and more complex over the last, I'm going to say it, a few decades?
Yeah, a few decades, yes, that's right. From the very beginning of my career, I was in the project, either developing project or running project as a project leader, then a project director, and all these type of positions. And I would say building a software when I started, or building an application, was pretty different from now on, because it was not simpler in terms of what the software was supposed to do, because we were, I would say, even if it was early in terms of automating processes, it was still business rules that we had to understand as software engineers. It was not always easy, but the technologies were probably less complex or less difficult to master. I still remember that even when I was at that age, I had some friend who said that I don't want to do computer science because you have to renew yourself every 3 months. You have to learn things every 3 months. So it was already kind of a theme. And I think that's something that has even been faster and faster now. If you look at the evolution of software over the last 30 years, there are evolutions every 2 to 3 years or 4 to 5 years. Even if it's a constant reinvention of what we were doing before, it's always with a better approach or a better component, or there is something to improve. I would say in every cycle, there is something in the development process or in the way the applications are developed that is going to be improved.
One of the things you mentioned there is refers to this cyclic nature that we have in life, but particularly when it comes to IT and different topologies that we have, whether it is, mainframe, vast centralization, and then we go to client server and everything going out to the edge, and then coming back to, everything as a service, cloud migration. And now we've got the edge becoming, everything kind of moving back out to the edge again as well. It seems as though we go like a stone or like a snowball rolling down a hill. Every now and then, the same bit ends up at the top, but this time with a little bit more around it. I guess that's the evolution piece
Yes.
that we experience with that as well, right?
Yeah, no, definitely. If you look at some of the evolutions of the last, I would say, 20 years, I mean, post the internet era, w before the internet era, we were mainframe with mostly IBM. I mean, depending on the regions or the locations where you were not IBM. We had Bull in France and these kind of things, but it was mainframe. But on mainframe, we had virtual machines already in the 90s. And then we all moved to client server, so laptops or not even laptop, desktop at that time, and everything on your desktop and everything was running there. And it was a kind of, I would say, a mess, if I may, in terms of distribution and release of the software. But it was, I mean, better for the end user experience at the end. And then we came back to VM through VMware and this kind of approach where we are reconcentrating everything. We were reconcentrating everything on the server, and then we moved to the cloud. And it's kind of a concentration, but with a better distribution, an ability to scale horizontally where it was more difficult with I mean, laptop and VM obviously. So yes, it's kind of like you said, it's a rolling thing, and every time there is a little, I mean, something which is improved. I would say some part of it is improved, and I mean, we could argue on the fact that it's, I mean, the complexity is not improving really. I mean, it's making it probably more difficult for human to master everything and to be able to control what they're doing. And that's probably where we would be able to talk a little bit about the impact of AI and the ability that the AI is going to provide to human to go one layer or one step above, I would say, in managing the complexity. But definitely, I mean, that's the evolution.
Well, let's lean into that complexity then. And how do you begin to understand the different challenges that a developer faces today when working as part of a team with massive code bases, working across lots of different languages? It's a real challenge for somebody new to come aboard, let alone for anyone who already is in the team, to really be across at the level that is ideal across all of the moving parts of the software development landscape there.
I'm going to talk a little bit about what we do. I mean, or what I've been doing since the last, I would say, 30 years working in the same company. And the challenge, which is, I mean, I would say a global challenge, it's a challenge of complexity when you develop an application, and the size or the volume of information that you as an individual, when you join a team, you have to master to understand all the different pieces and the interactions between all the different pieces in the application. And it's not only a question of understanding the technologies, but you also have to understand the languages that are used to develop the different parts of the application. You also have to understand, obviously, the functional, the business logic of the application. That's also a big part of the understanding that you need to acquire when you join a team and you're not an expert of the domain. So it makes, I mean, the life of a software engineer today not if you take a step, but very complicated. And that's why most of the software engineers now are focusing on one part of the process or one part of the application. And because of the focus that they need, I mean, it's impossible for a human being to master more than 10 or 15. I never remember the number, but there is a magic number that, I mean, someone has come up with, saying that it's becoming weird or blurry if you go above that. People are focusing, and so they kind of lose the context. They kind of lose the view of the big picture. And if you want to do it to be very good, you need to constantly go back and forth and be at the same time an expert of your domain from a business standpoint, of your domain from a technology standpoint, and you also need to be not an expert, but someone with a general knowledge about the business and the different technologies. And that's what I've seen becoming more and more complex over the year for in the software development and software engineers. I mean, to address all these different challenges at the same time and be able to move from one technology to another technology to another technology, understand how a database is supposed to work. I mean, the optimization of a database server is not the same. Even across the different database server, you have different tactics or approach if you want to really be able to handle a large volume of data. And then you have different type of database server. You have the SQL, RDBMS one, you have the NoSQL, etc., etc. So this makes the lives of a software engineer complicated, I would say, because of the number of things that you have to master. And that's what at CAS, we've been trying to help to solve, I would say, that challenge of giving something more easy to digest.
And of course, this is not only a problem for developers, it's a problem for organizations as a whole and leaders within, whether you're a development leader or a CIO, CTO, whatever, responsible for having teams that are as efficient and as productive as possible. It is your problem equally there. And so we look to solutions, don't we? And well, goodness me, artificial intelligence is one of those tools, one of those capabilities right now that's been touted as a solution to, well, pretty much everything. I've yet to see that level of success, but it's certainly being touted as a solution to navigating all kinds of complexity. And given that we have a complexity problem with software development right now, how are you seeing AI impact software development at the moment? How are you seeing it fix some of these complexity challenges?
I think that there is one challenge, which is, even if it's still controversial, I think AI is already providing a pretty good answer to everything related to generation of source code. Meaning that if you start from scratch and you have a problem to solve and you know how to explain the problem properly to the AI, so you don't just say, okay, write an application to order pizza. It's not going to work for sure. But if you can explain it a little bit more, provide a right context to the AI, like you would provide the same context to a software engineer with some seniority, you can expect the AI to generate something pretty good already as a first, I would say, a first seed or a first version of the application. Then it all depends on how you interact with the AI. If you interact, I would say, providing context, explaining what you are trying to achieve, having a little bit of understanding of what you would like to have, then you can guide the AI and you can really gain in terms of productivity, in terms of efficiency, because you don't need to know everything. You don't need to understand everything about the technology. You have to have a background in computer science, maybe. That I'm not denying that. It's probably still a little bit early for people who don't know anything about computers and how to program, to use that to generate proper applications. But if you are a software engineer with some kind of training, and you don't expect too much, or you're not too lazy enough, I would say, or too much, then you can, generate pretty good source code from the ground up. The challenge for AI today is really on intervening, I would say, on existing application, because there is a context that you need to provide to the AI, which is going to be a large context, because there are not just one file, it's maybe 10,000, 20,000, 30,000, how many files and pieces in an application that you have to explain to the AI. And it makes, today, it's not feasible to train every model on every application existing on Earth, because it's a specific application. So there are techniques now that have been developed over the last 12, 18 months to ground the AI, provide information about, but that's where we are now. It's helping the AI to understand the context. And I think if we can succeed in that, and not just the context, I would say, by prompting the AI by what you have in your head and putting it in the prompt, you need to, all the information, all the challenges we talked earlier about understanding the application, knowing what's inside, knowing the different parts, it's still the same. If you want to explain it to the AI, you need to take it from somewhere. You don't have that in your head or everything or not even your documentation, because most of the time it's outdated. So it's not going to be fully helpful, I would say. Most of the work done in software development is modifying application. It's not specifically writing new application. We'll hear a lot about exceptions. A nice story about the new startups and everything that have written something from scratch. It's the 10% layer. There are tons of mainframe applications from the 90s, 80s that are still maintained. That need to be maintained, basically. And that's where the challenge is for AI, to be able to address this hidden part of the iceberg, basically.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point in terms of the majority of time that most organizations actually spend on development is maintaining existing code bases, maintaining existing applications. That's where a lot of the time is spent. That's where a lot of testing, regression testing, making sure that anything that you are deploying on top doesn't break what's already there, rather than writing from a kind of greenfield site. So understanding the code that you already have, trying to get the best visibility that you can on that, is time very, very well spent. And this, I guess, is what leads us towards what you call not artificial intelligence, although it is obviously within the umbrella of artificial intelligence, but specifically where we come to software intelligence. Tell me what you mean by that, Olivier.
Yeah, we've been what we've been doing since I would say over the last 25 years is to extract from what we call the source of truth, which is basically the source code and all the different elements that makes an application. When you have an application, it's a source code, it's property files, it's configuration files, it's different element of information that you need to make that application run, even data or things like this. And what we've been developing over the last 25 years is a system to extract information from that and I would say translate it into something that you as a human being can understand easily, can navigate easily. So it's a knowledge base of information. And what we call software intelligence is a term to designate these pieces of information, basically. It's intelligence about your software. And that's what we can provide to an AI, because if you have a small program of, 10,000 or maybe 50,000 lines of code, you can put that in a prompt, give it to an AI, and the AI will understand most of it. So it's going to be fairly easy. But how many applications on Earth are 50,000? Probably millions, but not very important. I mean, the big ones, there are millions of lines of code. I mean, 10, 20 million lines of code of COBOL. Some are 10, 20 million lines of code of Java. I've seen 50 million lines, 60 million lines of Java application. So it's a very large piece of software. Obviously, it's different systems inside, but they are all interconnected because they are sharing data. They are using the same database, sometimes same tables, etc., etc. So you have it's a complete interconnected system. And that's what we do. We can understand this very large complex system, and we can translate that into an intermediate lingo, I would say, that we can feed to the AI when the AI is asked to do something on a specific part of the application. So if you are maintaining an application and you need to do an evolution somewhere, you're going to tell the AI, okay, I need to modify this function, I need to add that type of business logic or whatever inside, and I need to make sure that there is no other impact elsewhere, etc., etc. And that's the information we can provide to the AI, so that the AI is going to be certain, or more certain, I would say, than just guessing, because we all know that AI can guess sometimes and hallucinate, like we like to say, and we can reduce the hallucination for the software intelligence that we provide. We feed to the AI for the different mechanisms that we have all heard now about MCP and all these different, I would say, details. But
so that's a real benefit if you are needing to add to, modify whatever an existing code base, then having the intelligence, the means to prompt what impact will removing this, changing this, adding this have. What bits of my code might I need to look at, which modules, which whatever, being able to have that in a kind of conversational way with the system and get that intelligence back can save you a lot of time. And I guess increase the accuracy and reduce the bugs ultimately
exactly.
that you might otherwise come across if you are, as a human, guessing here.
Yeah. No, I think one of the challenge for any software development leader, someone managing either an application owner or team leader or project director, whoever in the hierarchy, I would say, like you said, one of the challenges is the efficiency of the team because of the complexity of what is asked of the team and the pace of the business. We all know that we are all asked to do more with less. Basically, that's, I would say, a foundation of the discussion with any C-level guy in IT since 20 years. You ask to do more with less. And AI is seen as an accelerator there. That's a very, very true, I think. But we need to not ignore the weaknesses of AI, which is the knowledge of the specific system on which you need to intervene, and that's where we can help, basically, and that's the connection between the two.
Now, I've worked in software development before for one of the companies that you've mentioned today, as it happens. And the bugbear was always documentation. When you are working with large code bases, particularly on an application that's quite dynamic, should we say, rapidly evolving, the documentation can very quickly get out of whack. And that causes problems throughout the chain, whether you are a developer, whether you are an SME or an architect, or whether you are a software development team lead. You need to be able to refer to accurate, up-to-date documentation. And I'm going to guess that when you have an AI system, an SI system, software intelligence system that's trained on your particular code base, that changes how you think about documentation, how you can generate and update documentation too.
Yeah, because it's a live. You can. I mean, it's not really a live because we don't analyze everything that is, I would say, produced at the time it's produced, but we can analyze on a regular basis every merge request or this kind of approach, and you have always up-to-date documentation. And if you couple that with AI, I mean, AI will help to translate what we have in terms of information into something very easy to understand, because it's going to be written in English. You can converse with AI and say, okay, what about this? Are there any colors or anything that is going to, if I change the signature of my function, where is going to be the impact, sorry, et cetera, and you can ask the AI to really, because we provide that piece of information, the AI can ask us, I mean, the call graph of different functions, for example, and explore the flow of the data across the application. And combining the capability of, I would say, the conversation and the decision making of the AI with a factual knowledge base about the application is really a win-win game there.
And also those who are accessing it as well. And again, from my experience, particularly in global teams, you've got people working in different geographies, different time zones, sometimes with different areas of expertise. And while you would like to think that with collaboration platforms that we have today, actually everyone's always on the same page, we all know that's not always the case. So that kind of single point of truth, that single source that you talk about, I can see being even more beneficial there, almost the more global you get.
No, definitely. I mean, the collaboration aspect, and the fact also not relying, or I would say not bothering SMEs constantly, because in every organization you have SMEs who are supposed to be able to answer to any question which is not part of the documentation and that a junior can ask. I mean, being able to have this digital SME, basically, to which you can ask every question when you want, and you're going to get the same answer wherever you are in the world. That's also I would say, a very powerful way to make your team more efficient.
How do you talk about the productivity, the efficiency gains? Are there any metrics you're able to put behind this?
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on the use case. I mean, we have very few metrics about AI combined with software intelligence so far, because it's fairly new. So we are still experimenting with clients. We've seen good results in terms of, for example, chasing technical depth. Specifically, I would say the low level, not so damaging technical depth, the one that you push constantly forward because it's a small thing, but at the end you have, I don't know, 10,000 small things in front of you, and it's becoming a big thing. In fact, a big pile of mud that you don't know exactly how to address, and that no one wants to address because it's not very interesting. And AI can be very helpful there because it doesn't complain basically about the technicity or the interest of the job. So you can ask AI to do it. And that's, we've seen combining software intelligence and AI for this kind of, I would say, software intelligence to discover the technical depth and guide the AI to fix some of the technical depth issues, and then like a cycle, constantly remove technical debt. That's a good thing that we've seen with some of our clients today. We don't have measure yet on the efficiency, but it's really helped to I would say address a topic that no one wants to address because it's boring. Basically, it's annoying, and you're just pushing it in front of you. Another area where we have, I would say, more measure, because that's something we've been able to measure over time with different clients, is everything related to project discovery. So when we were talking about when someone jumps into a project, the complexity of everything that someone has to understand and to master, we know that there we can go from 10 to 25% more efficient in terms of gain in productivity. So I guess we have not experienced AI yet there, but I guess AI is going to increase that percentage. That percentage was without AI, I would say. Now with AI, because it's easier to converse, it's easier to explore, and AI can be, I would say, interesting because it can really add a layer of knowledge on top of what we are going to offer, or what the human being is going to question. AI by its own decision-making process can provide enlighten, I would say, with additional pieces of information that you were not asking for, but which are interesting for the problem or the question you're asking. I mean, the whole conversation is really fascinating at the end of the mechanism of conversation is really fascinating to learn quickly, something that you didn't know before. So we think that the 10-25% that we see now is probably going to be, I mean, more than that. How much? It's difficult to say for now.
Let's talk about, I guess, one of the elephants in the room, which is about privacy and security here. And as we've seen when we've, again, going back on all the different revolutions that we've been on in IT over the years, the kind of centralization, distribution. Obviously, when we had the big move to the cloud, there was a lot of concern about the privacy, security, sanctity, regulatory stuff around our data, our customers' data, as well as our unique IP moving up into the cloud. Now, when we start talking about AI as well, there are some similar questions, and we're seeing many organizations really lock down access to some chats, LLMs, for fear of information that they don't want leaking outside of their perimeters going onto cloud systems. So when we're talking about source code here, sometimes this is the secret sauce that helps an organization to run. Some organizations are going to have concerns about enabling an AI to access that source code. So what kind of protections, measures, controls do you have in place that works for those different customer types?
In our case, I would say, I mean, we do not share source code with AI in the different, I would say, approaches that we have developed with different clients. We are not sharing source code. I mean, the client can decide to share source code with the AI, but what we share most of the time, for example, in technical debt reduction, are going to be small pieces. So not the complete application, or at least never the complete application at once. So there is no way for someone to be able to recompose, over time, all different pieces and say, okay, that's the whole coherent thing, a consistent thing. What we share are the information that we have extracted from source code, which are information, so which can give, I would say, some hints about the source code, but they are not the source code. So if there is any kind of proprietary, I would say, algorithm, for example, that's not something we are going to share. If someone has developed something very well optimized to calculate an honor ratio or something, it's not something we are going to share. So I would say we limit what we share with AI, and then most of our clients anyway are using their own cloud with their own AI, basically. So I know there are limits to the privacy. It's, you rely on AWS to ensure privacy, obviously, but that's the promise of the providers. And they have implemented their own Azure LLMs or whatever. I never remember the names, but so they all have their own thing, I would say, instead of sharing with the general model that you and I use when you chat with ChatGPT or Claude. But I know it's a concern because we are getting more and more questions about what do you do with AI? How do you use AI? Do you have any feature powered by AI in the software? And this kind of, so it's a constant, it's a question that we are seeing now for almost every contract that we sign when we sell our software.
It's an exciting future when humans will be able to do the things that humans do best, and the AI can do the things that the AIs do best. It's a solid future for both there. Listen, we are almost out of time, Olivier, but before we go, there are some questions that we ask to all of our guests. This show is called CXO Secrets. So I have to ask you, Olivier, what is your secret with your leadership hat on here and all the experience that you've picked up over the last, few years in software development? If you were to put your modesty to one side for a moment, tell us what the key attribute you believe has enabled you to achieve what you have today?
I would say that, going back to what we said at the beginning, it's a constant, it's a cycle, basically. The software development and the software engineering is a constant cycle. And so if you think that, if you start in this world and thinking that you're going to be the genius, creating a new thing that no one has never invented, you're going to be, I would say, either disappointed or put in a box as kind of a genius no one wants to listen to. I would say so. I'm not sure it's a secret, but I would say humility in front of the task and humility in front of what software development is and what people have done before you. Really learning from what everyone has done before you and trying to just bring your small, I don't know if it translates well in English, but in French we have a saying that you bring your own rock to the wall. Basically, you put your own piece on the wall. And if you aim at doing that and you don't think that you're the less genius thinking, there are some genius owners, definitely, but I think most of us are not genius and we are just trying to be very good at what we are. And if we are doing that with humility, it should, most of the cases you're going to be successful, at least see some success in your life, I would say.
I think that translates very well into English, actually, and the humility point there really, really sings through. We do a Pass the Question on this show where you get to put a question to a future guest, whoever they may be. And we have a question for you from CTO at Norseman, Dave Hoon. And he asks this question.
I would like to know some of the more unique implementations of AI that are being considered within your organization, apart from generative or agentic AI. What specific problems are you looking to solve using artificial intelligence?
In our case, because of the software we're building and because for that software, we need a lot of knowledge and understanding of the different, I would say, components, technologies, and everything that are used by the software community. One of the challenges we are trying to tackle with AI is to be faster and quicker to learn about the technologies, because we try to solve it for people, but we need to solve it for us. At first, and we are using AI to be faster, quicker in understanding the evolutions. Why is this version different from another version? For example, to give a very simple example, a version of a different software. Or, what are the similar concept in the different technologies? If you want to address a new technology, like for example, we did Golang in the past. If we had used AI at that time, we would have asked AI, okay, describe Go compared to C, compared to C++, compared to Java. What are the differences? What are the similarities? And how we can, I would say, address the language in the same or in the different manners, etc., etc. And I would say that's the exploration. Really using AI knowledge to be quicker in understanding the complexity of the world. I would say that's what so it's not about generative. We are not using, and we are a little bit, I would say, late on that, using generative AI for source code, because I only have, most of my engineers are senior software engineers, and so they are all a little bit reluctant with AI. You have to push them. But I would say otherwise, in terms of learning faster, that's really, something they are exploring.
And finally, Olivier, what question would you like me to put to a future guest on a future episode of CXO Secrets?
My main question was, why are we afraid of AI, basically? And so what are you doing to use AI in a way that you're not going to be afraid of the consequences of using AI, basically? That would be my question.
I like how you framed that with the fear. People are afraid of AI. I don't think there's any denying that. People are excited about it, but there's a lot of, because of all of the unknowns, there's a lot of fear about it as well. So I think framing a question around the fear and what are you doing about that is very smart. Thank you. Thank you, Olivier.
Thank you
I
very
have to
much.
ask, if people want to find out more about what CAST does and about what we've been talking about here today, where is the best place for them to reach out and find out more?
Well, our website, so it's www.castsoftware.com. Everything linked. And you will find, information on the different products that we have and the technologies and everything.
We'll make sure that we include a link to that in the description for this episode of the show. But for now, Olivier Bonsignour, thank you very much for joining us on CXO Secrets.
Thank you very much for having me.